But then you just don't like it.
My objection to it is I think it's an evil state, and I have to
Well,
politically.
no. You don't believe in evil. You think evil has an ontology? You think that there's actual evil? No, you don't believe in fucking evil. Stop. Just stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Tell me what evil is. Tell me what evil is. Go ahead. What is it?
Okay. Well, I can tell you what I definitely don't think it is, and I think
Oh,
that.
that's great. I asked you what it is.
Okay. Well, I don't think that supporting something just because you think it works, if you think that it's not true, if you think that it's a lie, if you think that it's fundamentally not true, then for you to support it just because you get a benefit out of it, just because it sorts your life easier, just because it gives you a foundation to work with, if you don't actually believe the foundation underneath of which that surfaces, then you are doing something that I think is evil. And I do think that you're doing
Yeah,
something.
what is evil, though?
What is evil?
Evil? Yeah, what is the ontology of evil? What is it?
What is
Is
the
it just
ontology?
anything that doesn't align with your preferences is evil?
I mean, yes. I mean, like,
Yes.
and that goes for everyone.
So great.
You can laugh at me, but like, I'm going to laugh at you, and I'm going
Hang
to
on.
do
So
the
the
exact same thing.
entirety, the
So
entire,
return back to like what
if
I
the,
was saying at the
hang
very
on, if the
beginning of this. This
entirety,
has to do with you.
yeah, if the entirety of the idea, if the entirety of the idea of it's evil because it doesn't align with my preferences, then you can never make an objection to anything that I say, because as long as it aligns with my preferences, it can't be evil. So here's the thing. I think it's evil for you not to believe in every single lie. Why am I wrong?
I mean, you might not be wrong. That's an opinion. That's a personal preference of yours.
Unfucking believable.
I can't like.
It's like, hey, you can't tell me what it would be wrong for me to advocate.
I'm going to return to where I was at the
lies.
That's
at a time.
Why is it the case?
And Andrew, your mic is popping when you escalate. I don't know if you need to click a volume or something.
That's on your end, not on my end.
It's popping. I can adjust it on my end then.
So anyway, so back to this. Now that we've established evil doesn't even have an ontology, I'm going to demonstrate how you don't even believe what you just said. You literally don't even believe the thing that just came out of your mouth. Have you ever heard of Plato and Plato's Republic and the idea of the noble lie? The idea here being that if a civilization could be united around a lie to the point where they thrived, but if you were to take away that lie, the entire civilization would be doomed. Would you advocate then that we lie or enforce that lie or promote that lie or take that lie away, ma'am?
If it's actually dishonest from my personal preferences, I think that you should take the lie away, and I think that you should be honest with the people, because I think that
even if it led to the destruction of the people,
it would depend on like depending on like
it would
what
depend
it was.
now. Okay. So
I'm going to return to what I was
So what you're saying here is
that I think that like what you
hang
are
on,
saying.
I'm almost done with the inquiry, and then you can move the topic on. Okay. Again, what you're actually saying here then is not that you believe that honesty is the best policy, or even that you believe it's evil. You said it depends on the situation. So if you thought that a lie was sufficient enough to hold the glue of a civilization together and lead to great outcomes in the civilization, you would support said lie. Would you not?
I don't think that I necessarily would. I think that depending on
you
like
would let
how
the whole civilization die. You think that that's the more moral position? Really? Christians ought to follow what you guys say, huh?
I think that if you are watching an entire town being slammed with a tsunami and dozens of people being murdered and destroyed in their beds, and you decide that you're going to ignore that and you're going to continue to worship the person who made those conditions possible because you think that you're going to get a benefit of a easier life, a philosophical foundation, and the chance for you to go into heaven, that you are doing something wrong. Because what you're saying is basically that you're fine with innocent people suffering and dying in exchange for you being able to receive the benefit of you not burning for eternity.
But
so I don't think that that's a moral thing. I actually think it's a very cowardly thing. Okay?
You made an introduction of conditionals, which are actually absent to the point here, right? So let us assume for a moment the government's not lying about any tsunami which happens. In fact, Christians, let's just say, because this is true, overwhelmingly pour support in for those tsunami victims, unlike the secularists who are always bitching about how nobody's doing enough, even though it's always the Christians.
Can you prove that?
Yes, I can prove it. Yes. In fact, Elon Musk himself has stated this emphatically all over Twitter. They've run the numbers multiple times. Christians overwhelmingly give more to charity. But on top of this, stop, bro. Let me finish my point with her, and then we'll move to you. Let us assume for a moment, and yes, I'll demonstrate those for you, Fatty. Let us assume for a moment that the government was completely transparent with those things. Absolutely. And it led to overwhelming charitable contributions from like said Christians, which it does. right? It does. If you were to pull that away and it led to civilization collapse, and when you had like a hurricane or something like that, actually less and less people contributed or decided to help because they all turned into fucking nihilists and the civilization collapsed. Why would you ever in a million years want to push for that system if that were going to be the case? Now here's what you can't do. What you can't do is change the conditionals around to, but what if that wasn't the case? I'm saying, what if this was the case? If it were the case, 100%, that by stripping away whatever this noble lie was, that the population would collapse and the outcomes for everybody in it would be far and away worse. Dead babies, the whole 9 yards. Would you support the noble lie or wouldn't you?
Would I support the noble lie? It depends on like what you mean when you say that. But I suppose the short answer would be I probably would, but that is a dishonest framing of this situation. And it's dishonest because
well, then it's not evil to lie. Then it's not evil to lie.
It is evil. It is evil. It's evil to yourself.
It's evil to, so what does that even mean?
Do you think
it doesn't mean anything?
Do you think that it's okay
it's
for
evil
you
to
do you think that it's okay for you to the benefit that you receive is not other people not suffering. The benefit that you receive is you not suffering, your soul, your salvation, you being sure. It's you as an individual. You are the person who suffers as a consequence for making this choice, not millions of other people. That's not who's. And secondly, if we're going to talk,
as long as you change the conditionals, you can change conditionals any which way
well,
you
I'm
want.
telling you that
test my logic, that's fine. But changing the conditionals around when you already answered yes proves 100,000% that your earlier bullshit answer.
It's not a bullshit answer.
It's evil.
It's absolutely evil.
It's not evil.
It's absolutely evil. If you are worshiping,
so you're an evil person?
Do you think bone cancer is evil? Do you think that bone cancer is evil? Do you think that children dying of leukemia is evil? Do you think that natural disasters are evil and like people not helping out is evil? Do you think so? Because you saying that you don't have a moral foundation to that, to me, that's ridiculous. I think I
said evil doesn't have an ontology. You're the one who claims it does. So on top of this, you not only did you refute yourself and the fact that lying was evil because you yourself would do it as long as I gave you the certain subset of conditionals.
Yeah, but the certain subset of conditionals that you're talking about is other people suffering.
Okay,
and that's not the conditional that exists within Christianity. The conditional that exists within Christianity is that you accept evil in exchange, that you have to accept evil in exchange for a personal benefit.
You don't have a definition of evil except things that don't align with your preference.
Can we try to go one at a time? I know it's getting hot and heated and all that fun stuff, but just please one at a time because it's just sounding like shit in my ears. Thank you.
Okay. If God came and told you to shoot somebody, would you do it?
No, that would be illogical. That would be impossible.
Why would that be illogical?
Because God has a nature. God has a nature, and if God deviated from his nature, it couldn't be God. Therefore, it's an illogical.
God told Jacob to bring Isaac to the stone table to sacrifice.
This is going to be super basic.
Possible.
How do you know God's nature if he's omnipotent?
When you guys are done spurging, I'll give you the answer. I'll give you the answer when you guys are done spurging.
Torsha, did you want to chime in? I'd love to.
So here we go. So it's really simple. This is just basic philosophy, Fairy Queen. You should probably kind of brush up on it a little bit. God has a nature. God has an ontology. Since God has an ontology, God has a nature. If he deviates from the nature, you know that that's not God. So it's anything which. So when you talk about logical possibility, even within the conceptualization of what is a hypothetical, the conceptualization of what is logically possible is going to be dependent upon worldview. You as the secularist, right? You're going to have all sorts of things which are logically possible, which are not going to be logically possible for me. Do you understand? They're not going to actually be even characterizing the question is illogical.
From your perspective,
I'm telling you, it's like asking me what
Isaac and Abraham.
Like
I'm bringing you the biblical explanation right now. Okay, so first of all, I reject this framing that this is against the nature of God because we have examples within the Bible, within the Scripture,
and God telling people to shoot people.
We have examples of like God telling a father to sacrifice his son and to kill him.
You mean Abraham?
Yes, and he changed it at the last minute. But the point is that that he was fully willing to do it until the moment where he told him.
Has God ever told a Christian to kill somebody?
He told a Jewish person to kill someone in that instant.
Has God ever told a Christian to kill anybody?
I've already given you an example within the Bible.
Has God ever told a Christian to kill anybody?
Has God ever told a Christian to kill anyone? I mean, I personally don't know. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah. Okay. You don't know if that's the case?
I do know that it's this much to be the case. The symbol of Christianity is the symbol of Jesus being crucified on the cross. It is the symbol of, and that is, which it ties back into the story of Abraham and Isaac. It is a idea that is so fundamental to what it is to being a Christian that it is a symbol that Christians wear around their necks. The symbol of Jesus dying on the cross to absolve you of your sins. That is an example of God telling Jesus that he had to die, and not only telling Jesus
is God.
Okay, well, so Jesus chose to die. So
yeah, so he had a duty. So he fulfilled it. So he
does
by
God
his own
have duties?
So he
Does
by
God
his own
have duties?
admission.
Does
So
God,
he by
does
his
God
own
have duties?
admission, whatever duties God assigns himself are God's duties. Right.
So, and you would agree with me that any duties that he assigns you, like, are your duties.
Yes,
right?
I would agree with that.
And any rights that he gives you are also your rights.
Yeah, he doesn't give anybody any rights.
And if tomorrow there was a miracle that came down and changed some principle within the Bible, or that changed one of those principles,
going to get to
you
the
would
part where
necessarily have to change them.
Christians should support women's rights.
Are you ever going to answer the question or not?
I've answered it 50 times.
If the angel came down and told you that one of the principles that you had were wrong, would you have to change them? Yes or no?
No, that would be impossible. That would be a false revelation. It would have to be a false revelation because we know from the Bible there can be no prophets after Jesus. So if an angel tells you that a revelation must change and you must be the new revelator, that has to be a demon. You just don't understand the theology, and that's why you make a fool out of yourself constantly. This is really basic stuff.
I don't know. I can't understand why humans are so confident into describing a transcendent, omnipotent, omniscient being that has no boundaries, nothing, and everything he does is good. No matter what he does, is always good, which actually doesn't go well with human logic. But I surely don't understand why you're so confident as human beings to describe something.
We're not.
Of a being
not only
like
are we
this.
not confident.
No, you were when she asked you.
Answer your question. Okay.
No, but it was a rhetorical question.
That's great. I'm going to give you a real answer.
It was a rhetorical question because
I'm still going to give you an answer.
Let me, Andrew, please. When people decided to do the Crusades, they said that God told them to do so. They told that, right? Why shouldn't I trust them? Right? One second, please. Why shouldn't I trust them? Like there was tremendous atrocities committed in the name of God because somebody told the Pope, somebody told the priest, somebody told the military men that they should subjugate whatever it was, and they did it. And we believe them because, once again, we don't have an understanding of God, no matter how many books you read, because those books are written by men, right? So I just find it, and again, if I'm losing the goalpost, you guys can go back because you guys were talking a lot.
I mean, I just kind of think.
One second, please.
That's what happens when you go on rants. You lose your own train of thought.
No, I don't. Again, you guys cover a lot of ground. Like people that donate the most are not the religious people or the Christian people. It's the empathetic people. I guarantee you, in Japan, when that shit happened in Fukushima, even though they don't believe in your God and they don't believe in Christ, that they were actually extremely given towards their society.
So we're Christians.
Because
Christians
they felt
have most of the Western nations for that too. Even for the rebuilding of Japan, it was still mostly Christians.
Sir. Respectfully, if we look, for example, what happened in Katrina when that Christian that ran a super church literally closed the arena and let thousands drown because he didn't want to allow people inside of his arena.
Sometimes Christians do bad things. Yeah, that's true.
You can always find anecdotal evidence to actually get your point across. My question to you is, and again, to go back to the topic, and if
before you ask me the question, can I answer to all this bullshit first?
Yeah. But I'll put another question on. You are good doing notes.
You can't.
You are good doing notes.
You can't answer to any of it. That's insane.
You are good doing notes. I know you are used to dominating people, but you have to wait a second. Just a second. No,
you don't get to answer. Ask the question.
I will answer.
Then you can ask a question. Let me just respond to this.
Can you give me a package deal? I will ask a question. And you can answer all of those, right?
Why are you gish galloping so hard?
Because I can. Because I can. Just like when you do it when you can.
Fatty,
my question to you would be very simple, right?
Okay, I'm just not going to answer it though.
What did you say?
I'm just not going to answer it until I address everything else.
Pouting?
No, I'm just telling you, I'm not going to answer it until I answer everything
But
else.
that's the point. Why can you talk for 7 minutes and interrupt it? And when people talk, you get PC about
I haven't
it?
talked for 7 minutes uninterrupted. That's
Oh,
insane.
you didn't?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to be quiet and I'm not going to ask the question. When you're done, the question is: should women be should women be second-class citizens because they can enforce their rights?
Yeah,
Go ahead and do whatever you have to do, sir.
From your worldview, yes. From my worldview, no. So, real quick, yeah, no, I know you see, I sound stunned, but I guess I have to go back and address all of this other.
Please explain me.
Oh, now you want? Oh, see, this is why I wanted to make sure I went back and addressed all this shit first.
You are behaving like the modern woman that you fight every week on whatever podcast it is.
Deal.
All right.
Yes, you can control yourself.
Go back and talk about all this, but now I don't have the package deal.
No, you have the package deal. That's the question.
Well, then can you be quiet so I can talk, speak to all this other stuff that you brought up? Okay,
yes,
so
yes,
first and foremost, so that you understand, you're just kind of a logical fallacy machine, right? When you talk about omnipotence and omniscience and things like this, these are considered for this reason to be a divine mystery. Yes, it's very difficult to give descriptors for these things. This in orthodoxy is considered an essence energy distinction, in fact, meaning that you can partake in some of the aspects of God, but not the entirety. It would be impossible because his nature is a mystery. It's a divine mystery. Okay, so I'm trying to explain to you these concepts so that later on you don't embarrass yourself so badly when you say insane things like why are Christians always so adamant that they understand the nature of God? They're not. They understand, but the aspects of what is logically possible within the nature and confines of God, that's easy to understand because logic has laws, and those laws are an obeyance which we have to obey. Don't put your finger up until I'm done. So on top of this, to get back to your other question now that I've addressed the first, kind of flurry of stupid shit that you said, to get to the actual question, when you say a second-class citizen, are children second-class citizens because they can't vote? I don't think they are. Are children second-class citizens because they have to obey? I don't think they are. So are you saying that children should be empowered and imbued with the same exact what you consider rights as adults? Should a 5-year-old be able to go buy an Uzi, for instance? No, it doesn't comport with.
That's actually stupid and a fallacy.
It doesn't comport.
That's actually stupid and a fallacy. You are doing a whataboutism.
So again, it's
not a whataboutism. Stick on woman, please.
Dude, again, I'm testing your logic. When you say second-class citizen, you haven't described what that means. And I'm giving you an example of a subgroup which would not have any of the X rights that men or women have right now. And I'd like you to explain why it's okay to take that away from them. But for some reason, if women couldn't vote, for instance, now that's immoral. Can you fucking explain that to me?
That's actually crazy because like you tell me that this is a stupid argument, right? And you are the professional one, you know it all. But you say God is mysterious after you literally said God wouldn't tell me to do that. How can a mysterious God that nobody understands and he works in mysterious ways and there's a lot of room for understanding because sometimes up is down and down is up because God said so, and you say God will never tell me to do that? How do you know? Isn't that actually a contradiction? No. How do you know these mysterious God ways?
No, it's not a contradiction. You still have what is logically possible in the confines of the worldview. Right? It's totally consistent. You're not making even a refutation. You're actually doing something which is non-analogous. You're saying, hey, wait a second. You can't understand because you can't understand all aspects of a thing. You can't understand any aspects of a thing. It's like saying this. Are you sitting in a chair? Are you sitting in a chair?
Let's go with yes.
Okay. Define a chair for me.
Is a place where I can sit.
So a rock's a chair?
Yes.
And the ground is a chair?
Yes. Like what you're doing is what you do always. Because I don't know. No, this is stupid.
You can know aspects of it.
Because this is stupid. Because if I wanted to engage in your circumstances, I would go to Google and I will say, what is a chair? And I will give the basic definition of a chair. Just because I don't know what is a chair is doesn't mean that the chair has the complete definition of it.
The point isn't that there isn't a thing called chair. I agree with you. There's a thing called a chair. What I'm saying to you is that understanding the apparatus in its entirety is not actually possible. And let me explain what I mean. If you were blind, for instance, and you had never seen the sun, you, a man who has seen the sun, could you ever explain what a sunrise, the experience of a sunrise was to a person who had never experienced it?
Yes, I don't have to go to the moon to explain what the moon is. Yes.
No. That's not what I asked. What I
Yes,
asked
I said
is,
yes. I said yes. Yes.
yeah. Could you ever explain the experience of a sunrise to a blind man?
Yes.
The experience.
Oh, the experience? No, it's
No.
a feeling.
No,
Yes.
you couldn't explain the experience of it. And so this is the thing. It's like you can capture some of the energies of the thing, but never its essence in its entirety, including a chair. This is why it's fallacious for you to then make the same exact claim towards God, because you can know many, many things about this, but there's some things which could be elusive. Does not mean that the thing does not exist. That is the ultimate in fallacious argumentation, sir.
But you can explain to me gods. You can't. Because you're going to tell me something, the next Christian is going to tell me something. You Christians don't even agree about. Like, there's how many denominations of Christians are?
First of all, Christians do agree. Yes, they do.
No, you don't. Because if all Christians agree, why is not one denomination instead of 6 and a bunch of
Do you agree with me right now that if I self-identified myself as a black man, that would be an untrue statement?
Repeat that, please.
That if I self-identified as a black man, that would be an untrue statement.
Yes.
So how come we're supposed to assume that just because you self-ID as a Christian, that makes you one?
Oh my, come on.
Well,
Andrew.
I mean, I can give you.
Okay. No, what? Andrew, what is the litmus test of being a Christian? What is the metric that makes a person a Christian or non-Christian?
Theosis.
What is that in English?
Yeah, you don't know what it is?
No.
Yeah, but you're going to tell us what is or isn't
I'm an amateur. I'm asking.
Yeah, you're going to tell us what is or isn't a Christian, but you don't know basic Christian doctrine?
Absolutely not. I'm asking. I'm curious about it. I know nothing.
Yeah, so the goal of Christianity is theosis. This is becoming like Christ. That's the goal.
Can you elaborate on that, please? I'm not even joking. Elaborate.
Yeah,
please.
well, I mean, there's a long descriptor, but it's a mixture of sacraments, Christian ethics, these kinds of things. It's salvation through the idea of, well, I just believe that Christ died for our sins and that's enough. That is a modern concept, not a Christian concept. Christian concept is through both works and faith, not just one alone. And you will know one by the other, in fact. And so, yes, the ultimate goal is theosis. And so the idea here that we don't know what a Christian is, or that we can't tell what a Christian is false. It's false. It's not a no true Scotsman fallacy. That's actually fallacious in and of itself, because we can make these IDs with other categories, and we do it all the time. When a person, for instance, self-identifies as a communist, if they don't meet the criteria for what a communist is, we would say, sir, you're not a communist, even if you think you are. And so this is why I reject the idea that because, and secularists bring this argument up all the time, you can't know what is or is not a Christian, because so many people say, well, yes, you can. Just like you can know what is a communist. A person simply self-IDing as a thing does not make them the thing.
I would agree that self-IDing as the thing does not necessarily make you the thing. But the problem, like with Christianity specifically, is that Christianity has a long history of turmoil, of arguing between bishops and arguing. Right, but secularism doesn't make the same claims as you do.
No, they make worse claims because they have a changing standard, which makes them worse.
Yeah, but you make another. Yeah, but you make you also make a worse standard, and your standard is that it can never change for any other reason. But whenever we bring up examples of like the torture of Galileo, the Spanish Inquisition, when we bring up examples of Catholics. Yeah, when we bring up examples of Christians doing evil things, like throughout history,
you can't call them evil things.
The answer is always,
you don't believe in evil.
Well, we couldn't have known any better than anybody else did at the time, because, like,
why don't you just qualify
it with limited by the knowledge that we had at the time.
That don't align with my intuition.
What the heck is the point of any church if all you have to do to avoid responsibility when people say you are the one true church, you have this set of unchanging standards that whenever we go back to a historic instance of the church doing something evil or something evil being done by religious authority, is to simply say, well, that's because of the historical context. No, the historical context shouldn't matter. And the fact it should not
the same
matter.
Standard with secularists?
No, because secularists don't make the same claims. They don't make the same claims. You are making the claim that you are the one true church and that you have one standard that exists for eternity.
Are you the one true secularist?
That's not my claim.
Well, no, it is your claim. In fact, I can prove it's your claim. You said all things which are good and all things which are evil are derived from your own personal standard. You are God. For all intents and purposes, you, madam, you think you are God. All things which conform to your intuition are good, and all things which do not. When's the last time I saw you get held to a standard by anybody? Fucking never. Am I sure you've ever been held to a standard? No, never. Right. But for all intents and purposes, from your worldview, you're God. So it's like before you go and point at the churches,
you are a slave.
Goddess.
From your worldview, you have to do the reason why you have rights, the reason like why you believe the things that you do is because you've been commanded to believe those things. Simply because of the fact.
So do you. In fact, yours is worse. Yours is worse. At least we can have martyrs because we can say this doesn't go with our unchanging standard of what morality is. For you,
don't have
it's just the barrel of the gun. For you, it's just the barrel of the gun.
Over and over and over throughout history.
All you do, lady, I just listened to what you said. Calm down and let me speak. So again, what you say is, we don't even have an unchanging standard to appeal to. The only standard you appeal to is who has the barrel of a gun and who's enforcing your intuition.
Yeah, but I'm saying that is effectively.
Let me finish, and then I'll let you finish. I promise. The only standard you have is if it conforms to my intuition, because I am God, it's good, and that's it. That is your entire standard. You know who that fucking appeals to? Nobody. And your standards are all changing all the time, and you believe that they're only based on who has the authority and the barrel of a gun. But you're going to point at the church and say, how come people aren't holding them responsible? Give me a fucking break.
It's not about who's holding them responsible, Andrew. It's about the fact that the church claims to have a one singular standard that should exist permanently for that. No, I say that I have like a changing set of standards that depends upon like what my
your intuition is the standard.
You are saying that you don't have that you disdain upon personal preferences. You say, what the heck is the point of personal preferences?
Yeah, I know, but you don't. That's the point.
Unchanging, but neither do you. And the
unchanging standards you appeal to yourself.
You said you would let me finish. But
you're I don't understand.
5 seconds.
Is your own standard you?
Jesus Christ.
Is your own standard you?
Let her finish.
Is your own standard you? Can you answer that?
I'm not going to answer that because
you're not going to answer
me for 5 seconds. Okay. So here's the deal. Okay. You cannot have it both ways. You can't go to a church that repeatedly changes its mind, changes and has changes its standards over history, commits repeated acts of abuses upon people, and then say, and then what's your response to that? By the way, do you have a response to that? Is your response Catholics bad? Is that your response to the Spanish Inquisition, to the rape and torture of the Mayas, the Incas, and the Aztecs? Is that your response? Is it just
you mean when they went and they put a bunch of human sacrificers to death? All those terrible bastards. Oh, those horrible people. Oh my God. Did they go take a bunch of rapists and human sacrificers and put them to the sword? Oh no.
Oh yeah, and then they raped
and then they killed them, and then they enslaved them, and then they refused to let them marry. Sacrifice to the sun god. What will we ever do? Oh no.
So do you feel the same way about the torture of Galileo?
Well, I mean, so that was essentially a pissing contest between Galileo and specific members in the church who were, in fact, held responsible for this. So that's one. But then when you move, and I'm not defending the Catholic Church, but I'm going to tell you again, I want to know why it is that you think it was some evil that was done when the Inquisition went through and put to the sword a bunch of kid rapists and human sacrificers. Can you tell me what they did that was wrong, ma'am? Should they have done it in a more humane way? Should they have come in while they were sleeping and put them to sleep with a needle? Like, what should they have done with these barbaric, disgusting, child molesting, human sacrificing people? What should they have done, ma'am? What should they have done?
That sounds like the Catholic Church, by the way. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You got this.
Well, I think anything other than raping and torturing them, I don't think that's necessary. I think that it's absolutely.
They didn't rape anybody. They weren't raping anybody. What are you talking about?
You don't think that there was any history of sexual assault?
No. And if there was, the Catholic Church rooted this out vigorously. What happened there during the Inquisition with these barbarians is that with the second they made the determination that they were a bunch of kid-diddling, human-sacrificing fucking monsters, they ended up trying to reform them. And when they couldn't, when they were attacked by these savage barbarians, they defended themselves. Oh
Yeah,
no!
but what
Oh
about
my God!
how?
How
What did?
dare
Yeah,
they?
but afterwards, they enslaved those people and they forced them to mine and they
Oh,
took over
did
their
they?
supplies
Oh
What
no!
I am going to
We should
ask
and their
is
resources
continue
away.
to sacrifice and
panel.
take kids. Oh no, they're so
Pardon me for
terrible.
just a moment. What I am going to ask is we are mindful of the words we are using. Just be
Oh
mindful,
yeah, I'm
please.
sorry. I'm sorry about
Thank
the
you.
Oh,
TOS
I'm
there.
sorry.
I
Good.
appreciate it.
So real quick, I guess now would be a good entry point too, because this is going nowhere. It's circular. For us to actually get back to the topic at hand, which I don't even feel like we've gotten to, which is should Christians be advocating for women's rights? And so my argument to you is that by you claiming that Christians should be advocating for anybody's rights, including women's, you are actually advocating that Christians utilize force or incentivize other people to utilize force on their behalf. Is that what you're actually doing?
I am saying that, the reason why I'm saying that is because I would consider voting to be a form of force, but it's a form of force that we accept. We accept taxation as a form of force. That's certainly forcing people to give up their money. We don't consider that to be a rights violation. There are many things that we expect from people to do, and we don't consider it to be a bad thing. So yes, voting is a form of force, and asking to tax people is a form of force, and it's a justifiable form of force.
Yeah, voting is not a form of force. It's a form of setting aside force. So what we're doing is we're utilizing a compromise to force so we don't have to use force. In fact, that would be what the idea of the vote was supposed to be. This, by the way, you can go back to the original democracies. The philosophers of the time explained this ad nauseum, that there had to be some way for you to compromise absent force. And so they could use a vote to do that, with the idea that you could use force to back it if necessary. Now, I still think that while that does reduce to force, that ultimately all you're really asking here, the ultimate question is, how do we get Christians to utilize force doctrine in order to advocate for some secular idea of rights? And so as we've been able to kind of go through this debate, we have determined that your secularist idea of rights don't even make, they're just whatever your preferences are. So to ask Christians to basically utilize force to enforce your preferences, I will say is evil.
Okay,
So
but what I am saying, and what I said at the very beginning, is that there is an overlap between your preferences and between my preferences.
What?
Why?
What's the
Because
overlap?
the overlap could be any political issue you could think of. So you mentioned trans issues.
Abortion.
Okay, so that's not an issue. That's an issue we would disagree on. But
oh, okay. But you want us to enforce your right to abort babies? Should we enforce your right to kill children, ma'am?
Listen, okay, if you want to be able to end men being able to go into women's spaces, then you necessarily have to get secularists to come on your side in order to enact force in order to do that. You don't think that you don't think
Nope, secularists are dying off, ma'am. They're dying off. They can't reproduce. Have you seen what their numbers are? Have you seen what the reproduction numbers are between the religious and secularists? They cannot reproduce themselves. It's only a matter of time. We can play the long game. Christianity's been around for thousands of years. It's going to stay here for thousands more.
You think that has to do with? You think that has to do with religion or with people?
Fatty, let me make the argument.
Oh my! I'm sorry. You guys had the date. I apologize.
Don't even know what the argument is.
I knew. Yeah, I apologize. It was a date. I apologize. My bad.
Okay. So anyway, so here's the argument. The argument is Christianity is going to be here in another 1,000 years. Secularists aren't. And we know this because we know what Western secularism looks like as far as reproduction goes. They cannot reproduce themselves. They just aren't. And this is due to nihilism, the fact that they value taking a woman's reproductive years and spending them at college rather than having her actually reproduce. Christians value a different thing. And that's why the average age of marriage in the nation is over 30 years old, which is fucking insane. And there's no way that secularists are going to be able to keep the reproduction rates high enough. So who cares anyway? You can't even do it.
Let Fatty come in on this.
I just wanted to say, I think what Andrew is saying is a fallacy, because the most powerful group in the West is not walking around with the sword and the shield and trying to impose their force into others. The real untouchables in the Middle East, next to Palestine, they do sanctions, they do collaborations with countries that have more than them, aka the United States. They do political pressure. They have lobbies, extremely powerful. They dominate the film industry, the music industry, all of that. They're not walking around saying you have to do what I need you to do or I will delete you. they are using their influence, power, and apparatus to actually get what they want. So why wouldn't the Christians do the same thing to make sure that society runs well and it protects the weakest of the weak? Like, why wouldn't they do that?
Well, I think that they would do that on behalf of the value set that they would actually advocate for, that they would use force in order to advocate for that value set. But when you're talking about women's rights, all that this woman wants the right to do is be naked on camera and abort children. That's all women ever want to do in modernity. And let me ask you, ma'am, like, what right do you not have right now? What right do women not have right now? Is there a single one you can name that a woman doesn't have? A single one?
In the world or in the United States?
In the United States, a single one.
I think that surrogacy is a violation of women's rights. I think that the fact that women are able to like work as surrogates, I think that that's a violation of women's rights. I think that prostitution, like where it's legal, I think that that's a violation of women's rights. I think that the sale of like eggs and sperm donation and like using that, I think that that's a violation of women and men's rights, but also of children's rights because.
But not abortion, of course.
What
about OnlyFans? What about OnlyFans? Is that a violation of women's rights?
Yes. I do think so.
Okay.
I think that, like, I don't think that women, I think that it should be legal, unfortunately, because that's the principles of freedom of speech. But I do think it's immoral to participate in, and I don't think that like you should. And I do think that like it's damaging to women's status in society to participate in any form of sex work.
So if Christians utilize force for the entailment of giving women the right to no longer do porn ever, you're okay with that?
I'm not okay with that, and the reason why I'm not okay with it is not because I'm explaining why, okay? And it's because the principles of the place in which we live cohere to freedom of speech. And so, like, it would be a violation of the First Amendment in order to like make pornography.
I thought you just said it violates their rights.
It does.
Violates their rights to allow them to be prostitutes, but at the same time, you're saying you don't want to stop that because that would violate their rights.
I mean, this is the problem. This is the difficulty. Like, you're going to find that there are going to be rights that come into conflict, right? So I'll give you an example, okay? So the Westboro Baptist Church is an example of this. I mean, you can laugh at it, but like there are going to be conflicts of interest, like when we're thinking about like rights, they come into conflict.
I've never ever heard we have to enforce these rights, right? But we can't because they have the right to not have their rights enforced. It's like it's just stupid. Well, okay, but anyway, go ahead.
Fatty, did you have anything to add in?
No, I just wanted him to engage in my question. I don't think Jewish people, I don't know if they do, I apologize, like are actually using force to get what they want. They're extremely protective of their women and children, right? They actually go out of their way to do so. So my question was kind of ignored because these two probably have some, I don't know, probably their ex-boyfriend and girlfriend. I don't know what's going on here because I'm not aware. But like, why shouldn't Christians move exactly? Why shouldn't be Christians move exactly like the small community and wield their power, since they are probably the most popular religion in the planet? Why shouldn't they?
You mean that small community that has a nuclear armed country, the only nuclear armed country in well, I mean the largest nuclear armed country in the entire region that they're in, who backs them up using one of the largest lobbying groups ever called AIPAC? You mean that little tiny community that
tiny number
force has massive fucking military and a huge lobbying arm that uses force all the fucking time, has been responsible for tons of political assassinations. No force here. Move along. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Get out of here with this shit, Fatty. What are you talking about?
They are backed by the United States government. The day that United States don't back them, they have no power. No, but that's the point. How can this group go 10,000 miles across the ocean and have extremely powerful input on to the point where on YouTube, American company, we can't even say certain words without being punished by that? Like, they are not wielding guns to the YouTube owner. Let me finish. They are not
in a small region wielding them right this second.
Sir.
As we speak, they're wielding guns.
Sir, respectfully, they are not using the power that you actually talking about. They are using their influence. AIPAC, they don't go on meetings with guns on their pockets. They go there, they put their bag on, they take the papers and they say, this is what we want you to do this and this and this. My question once again, since the Christian religion is extremely strong, the Pope is extremely powerful, the Vatican has a tremendous amount of money, most of countries in Europe and the Western actually have a Christian base like leaning, why don't they do the same since they have way more money, way more nukes, way more resources, way more power? Why don't they do that?
They do.
So you are okay with them actually propelling women and making sure that women's rights are protected, just like they do, right?
So this is a different question altogether. So the descriptor is different than the ought. So when you hit me with the descriptor of why don't other countries do the exact same thing where they have lobbying groups, which then exercise power, and then they move their militaries in strategic positions across the board to utilize nuclear bombs and everything else in order to get the shit they want with their big fucking guns. Why don't other nations do that? Well, sir, I don't know. This might be news to you, but they all fucking do that. On top of that, hang on. I'm sorry, it's not crazy. They all do that. They all do that, sir. Every one of them does that.
So you think that country has more military power than the countries in Europe that have a bunch of nukes, the United States, China, Russia, all these countries? You really think that they have more power, physical power, because that's what you're talking about, to enforce their shit? No. There's no bigger company than Big Rock.
BlackRock,
if BlackRock, Big Pharma, and all these groups want something done, they will get it before these people do. So my question is, once again, why not use the influence to actually protect women and to push women's rights? What is so wrong with that? What is the problem with that?
So there's two kind of problems here. The first problem is all you're doing is pointing at groups of men and saying that they're all vying for dominance and power. Oh, well, gee, I never knew that, Fatty. That's insane. Incredible, insightful thing you just said there. On top of that, when you're talking about why shouldn't we exercise X thing for women's rights specifically, I just asked this gal here, what right would you even want Christians to be exercising their power on behalf of that women don't even currently have right now in the United States? You know what her answer was? I want them to exercise force to stop people from being in pornography because that's a violation of rights. And then I said, so if Christians did that, you'd be okay with that? She said, no, because that would violate their First Amendment rights. So this is incoherent psychobabble from my worldview. Hang on. Yeah, let me finish, and then you can. This is incoherent psychobabble from my perspective. Makes no fucking sense whatsoever. At this point, I honestly don't even know what the fuck you guys are talking about.
Okay.
Honestly.
So to be very clear, there are some of the things that I mentioned I do think should be illegal. So I think that surrogacy should be illegal. I think that like the sale of eggs and sperm, I think that should be illegal. I think that abortion after a certain number of weeks, like after like the fetus like gains consciousness, I do think that should be illegal. I don't support like late term abortions or post-birth abortions. And so there are things that I have listed there that I do think that should be illegal. And I do think that Christians should advocate in order to make it legal, because I do think that advocates. But at the same time, right, one of the principles that you agree to, like by being a Christian, is to give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Okay. It is that and frankly, right, like, and this goes back to like what I was trying to say.
We rebel and form a country so we don't have to give to Caesar anymore.
I mean, that is literally the founding of the United States, right?
That's right.
The idea,
yeah.
But unfortunately,
so
for you, and
Caesar,
but why?
Let her finish. She let you finish. Let her finish.
Oh yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, but like when we think about like the reason why the United States is a secular country is not because the majority of people weren't Christians. It was because there was a huge amount of disagreement between colonies about what it meant to be a Christian, and therefore what laws should be followed by the state. That was the big reason. It wasn't because like it wasn't necessarily just because like they didn't care about, like, as you mentioned, like there were lots of people who were Christians, but there were lots of people who disagreed about like what precisely that should mean. And so by making it a secular country, that doesn't mean it's an atheist country. It means that different people of different denominations can coexist peacefully, and whatever you believe is your private value is your business, but you have to follow as long as you agree to follow the legal code and strata of the land. And also,
so go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to like add this in because like this is way back from earlier in the conversation, the Treaty of Tripoli. I think we were both wrong. So I dropped the link in chat. If you like look at this, so you were right to reference Jefferson in the sense that, but it wasn't authored by Thomas Jefferson.
I didn't say it was authored by Jefferson.
Okay. Well,
I
just to
said
be
that's what you're sourcing as your reference for what was said with the separation of church and state was Jefferson, I believe.
well, no, the person who wrote it was Joel Barlow, and the person who signed it was President John Adams. I still stand by. I promise I'm not being dishonest. I will drop the link to the documentary where I watched it. But it is my belief that it was the original draft of the Treaty of Tripoli was drafted by George Washington. I can't find the source for it right now. I promise you I'm not making it up. Okay. So all of this to say, this really was in the Treaty of Tripoli. Okay.
Okay. I don't care about it. It's not even relevant or important. So
well, but the reason like why it's relevant and important is that do you think that the United States was founded as a Christian nation?
Yeah, so let's dive into it. Yes, obviously, all 13 colonies were adamant that they be allowed to have their prospective churches in their states. What happened is continental philosophers like Jefferson became highly subversive towards that because the Federalists wanted to concentrate power with the federal government. Okay, so they saw the church as a barrier to concentrating power. And so what happens is they subverted it over many, many years until they were able to get all of these states to create these barriers between the actual state reference constitutions and the churches in those prospective states. Yes, absolutely 100%. If you read what there's so many contributors to the Constitution a minute at a time who you can go and read what they said. And it's very obvious to me that, yes, these were Christian people. They very much even tied this type of stuff into their immigration policies even. They definitely did not want Catholics here. They definitely did not want Orthodox here. They didn't want any of those people here. They did not want Catholics here at all. There was one state, essentially, which allowed Catholics to come in, and the rest of the states hated them. So the thing is like, no, it seems like Christianity was very much the staple. What secularists have done is they've done a historic rewrite. Okay, secularism in the United States is a reasonably and relatively new phenomenon. This is not a thing. Every president in history has pandered to Christians, all of them, including Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. All of them do that. All of them are always pandered because that is the value set. That is the value set, which all things and all laws in the United States are based on, is this Christian value set of Christian ethics. Secularists are beginning to try to rewrite that as though somehow secularists doctored this. They most certainly didn't. The axiom itself from which the Constitution was written literally points to a creator from where the axiom comes from for them to even give you a valuation as a human being. Yeah, but for them to even give you a valuation as a human being, the only justification they could do was point to a God. That was it. They needed some unchanging standard that they could reference to say, this is what makes you a fucking person.
But what they couldn't do is like reference the Christian God, which is not what was referenced. Like they don't specifically
because
say
of denominations.
Yeah,
no,
but nevertheless, okay, it's codified in law. What is actually written is according to a God, which goes along with what I said at the very beginning of this.
Do you think it was the Muslim God?
I mean, I
like
don't
if you had to gamble.
Like
let's just assume that right now, men in masks with guns kicked in your door and ran over and put them up to your head and said, if you had to pick right now, which religious God were they referencing in the Constitution? Or else your life is forfeit if you get the answer wrong. Which God would you pick?
It's probably the case that they were referencing like their conception like from Christianity, but it's also the case that they also were highly conflicted about this, including Benjamin Franklin. So one of the things that
you mean the womanizing philanderer piece of shit, Benjamin Franklin?
That would be the one. And one of the things that he talked about, like in his autobiography, The Philandering Piece of Shit, Benjamin Franklin, was about how when his grandfather lived in the United Kingdom, that he had to nail a copy of the King James Bible to the underside of the stool, so that when people broke into his house, he wasn't arrested and burned or executed immediately. The way William Tyndale, the way many people like throughout that time of history,
it's scary to be a diplomat. It's scary to be a diplomat. Yeah, I know.
And then when he came over to the United States, and then when he worked in the
Yeah, because
United States.
Protestants and Anglicans hate each other, and Protestants and Catholics have always hated each other. And yes, they used to kill each other. And yes, being a diplomat during
no, it's
wartime,
not just that they used to
with a
kill each
country
other.
that has
They
its
still
religion.
do. They still do. They did in the past 100 years. And this is frankly like what I find like kind
No,
of
they're not.
like,
They're not killing each other right now.
in the past 100 years. Yes, they have. That is
Where?
absolutely
In
true.
Ireland?
Yes, in Ireland. Yes, they did. They
That's
absolutely
it?
did.
That's all you got is Ireland?
that's
This
all
little
you got?
tiny conflict, 1,700 people died in the entirety of the conflict? Wow.
It
Wow.
was a big.
But
How many
how
people-
is that?
Excuse
How
me,
is that?
How
How is that?
many children have secularists fucking murdered to the abomination of their own intuition? How
Yeah,
many fucking children do they murder a year?
Yes,
A
they
million?
started.
Well, I don't know,
They
but I will-
started a
but I will
bunch
tell
of
you-
wars.
But I will
The
tell-
question is,
but-
why is that important? Why is that important? There's a bunch of countries that came from Christian roots and they have a massive Christian population that are actually doing terrible. We have Japan, for
Where?
example, as 1% Christians, and is probably the most orderly society in the planet with
No,
family
sir.
values.
Jeff,
How is that
you
not
have
true?
Japan's history messed up. Let me explain to you what happened in
Huh.
Japan.
Yes.
So Japan went through a massive revolution after it was under the thumb of the Tokugawa shogunate for a good portion of its history. When it moved into the Meiji Restoration, it wanted all things Western, it was a backwards, crazy. Japan was so bad, samurai were molesting the children. That was the rite of passage. Okay, sorry. The samurai were doing things with boys. That was the rite of passage for these supposedly peaceful Buddhists. Okay, they were also under the Tokugawa shogunate. They were putting the Buddhist monks to death because the Buddhist monks were rejecting the shogunate. When the Meiji Restoration came in, they imported Western Christianity en masse and took all of those values and applied them to their nation. This did not come from Zen Buddhism. The only thing that Zen Buddhism gave Japan was fucking kamikaze pilots in World War II. Because it indoctrinated them that was the correct way for them to give their life for the cause. That was not Christianity, sir. And they got all the benefits of Christianity and still have the benefits of Christianity under the protectorate of a Christian nation.